Good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land in which we meet and by paying my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And welcome everyone to the very last City Lifestyle Committee meeting of 2021. I declare this meeting open at 9 a.m. I'd like to advise meeting attendees that this meeting is being webcasted and audio recorded, and just a reminder about practising social distancing and taking any necessary safety precautions. As today's agenda does contain a confidential report, I note that a proposed motion to suspend section 7.11A6 of the Local Government and Committee Meeting Code for the purpose of audio recording the closed session in today's meeting for Council's internal confidential use only. And that should now be displaying on the screen behind me, which it is. Can I have a mover for the motion, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor Fraser. By show of hands, all those in favour? Thank you. That has been unanimously supported. And councillors, I just note that Councillor Wilcox has contacted me to let me know that she's actually been held up in the wet weather and she is on her way in, so she'll be joining us soon. So that was unanimously supported with the exception of Councillor Wilcox. So as mentioned, there's no leave of absence for Councillor Wilcox. She'll be joining us soon. All right, councillors, we've got a few agenda items for you today. Thank you. I've just had it drawn to my attention that we do have a leave of absence for Mayor Power today, so I wonder if I might have somebody who might move the motion to accept that leave of absence. Mayor, thank you, Councillor Bradley. A seconder, thank you, Councillor Raven. All in favour, please raise your hands. And that's unanimously supported with the exception of Councillor Wilcox, and thank you for the reminder. Councillors, we've got a quite a busy agenda today and we will be moving around a little. You may have noticed there were some late reports that came in, so please bear with us as we get underway. The first item we have is item 4.1, which is the naming of the Yarrabilba District Community Facility. And I'll ask that our Acting Community Services Manager, Mr Ben O'Brien, join us for this discussion. But before we open this item, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they wish to declare? There being none, councillors, I note that this is a confidential item and it's considered necessary to take the discussion of the report into a closed session as the confidential report stipulates the proposed name of the community facility located in Yarrabilba and cannot be released prior to council endorsement. Do any councillors wish to move into closed session for this item? Well, if there's no need to move into closed session, there's no requirement for us to cease the audio recording and we can continue. I might ask the acting manager if he would like to provide us with an overview of the report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. This report seeks endorsement of the preferred or potential name for the community facility in the Yarrabilba Education and Recreation Precinct, potentially being the Buzz at Yarrabilba. To deliver this facility, council has partnered with the Department of Communities, Housing and Digital Economy, the Department of Education, the Department of Employment, Small Business and Training, Brisbane Catholic Education and Lendlease to deliver or shortly be delivering a facility that includes co-working spaces, youth spaces, training spaces, office spaces and kitchens and the like. It's quite an exciting project. There was a steering group around this initiative to name a facility made up of our project partners. Extensive consultation was undertaken with the community as part of an overall community engagement plan aimed at encouraging buy-in and ownership within this community for this facility. Shaped by the steering committee, the consultation included a number of community engagement sessions or public sessions, a Have Your Say a survey, and a number of targeted phone calls to key stakeholders to get feedback. Part of the feedback we received 119 responses from the community suggesting location and aspiration names for consideration for the facility. Of all of that feedback and the preferences, the steering committee made up of our partners came together and landed on the name of the Buzz at Yarrabilba for this facility. before we take any questions, I just wanted to thank Noelle and her team for their comprehensive work in engaging with the community around this, working with our partners and working with Councillor Kransky. Happy to take questions.
Excellent, thank you, Ben. And I'd just like to also acknowledge Noelle and her team who were out in the trenches out there, running surveys, and so thrilled to see so many young members of the community be engaged in the consultation phase as well. Councillors, do you have any questions with regard to this particular report? You'll see that there'll be a motion on the board behind me at the moment. Can I have someone to please move the motion? And I might add, just wearing a different hat, as the area councillor, I am supportive of the initiative. Thank you, Councillor Hall. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Bradley. By a show of hands, can I see all those who are in favour? Thank you, councillors. That's been unanimously supported, and I note Councillor Wilcox is with us. Welcome, Councillor Wilcox. Okay, councillors, moving on to the next item of the agenda. Now, this is also a confidential report, so we're looking to item 4.2, which is the proposed acquisition of land in Springwood for future community facilities. Before we open any discussion on this item, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they wish to declare? There being none, I note it's considered necessary to take the discussion of this report into a closed session as confidential report contains commercial and confidence information. Do any councillors wish to move into closed session at this time? Excellent. Councillors did ask for a short and sharp session today, so we're well underway. Thank you, councillors. As we won't be moving into closed session, I will ask the manager to speak to the aspects of this report that can be presented in open. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report comes to Council somewhat opportunistically. As the owner of two of the properties had approached Council via Invest Logan, seeking Council's interest in acquiring two of these properties. And is noted that I think the third property in this report is also listed for sale on realestate.com.au. The area in which these properties are located is identified as a, I think, zone for community and civic precinct in Council's current planning scheme. Council of the identified area currently owns, I think, 4 of these properties. Council has previously resolved in, I think, 2010 and also in 2020 to acquire properties within this precinct area. These 3 properties, and I think we're looking to acquire 3 of the properties by negotiation. There's also in this report an identification of seeking a resolution to acquire 2 future properties if and when they come up available in a future such time. Strategically, these properties do have importance with Council as they are identified in the Greater Springwood Plan, the current implementation plan, and again, as I said, zoned community and civic precinct in Council's current planning scheme. With regards to Council's community infrastructure strategy and the program-based budget, there is land acquisition identified in the current 5-year program, albeit towards the back end of the 5-year program. It's currently unfunded, but identified that the trigger for the land will come in the 5 years. However, the development of a community facility is currently beyond the current 5-year program, if that were to happen. If Council is considering the acquisition of these properties, there is a proposal within the report that this could be funded via the Community Infrastructure Strategy program-based budget for the time being, and with the potential to include it in a future LGIP, so that the collection of those infrastructure charges as part of the schedule of works within Council's LGIP would reimburse the Community Infrastructure Strategy budget, so as not to push back any future projects either by bringing this potentially forwards. The other component of this is subject to the properties being fit for purpose. Council could consider continuing to rent these properties for the time being until such time as those land is needed for the development of the building itself. The next step in this process would be a needs assessment for these properties. I think in our CIS we identified that the land is needed for a community facility, performing arts and art gallery. We wouldn't just put in 3 buildings, we would look to co-locate that for an efficiency of space perspective. Happy for Noelle and I to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Avery. Now, I note, councillors, I've got a couple of councillors asking questions. Just a little reminder that we are in open session, we're not in confidential. So if you have any questions that you think might be leading into a space where we'd be better behind closed doors, then you may want to reconsider whether we move into confidential. First up, I have Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, through the chair. I was talking to a number of members of the community last night about this particular topic, which became public a couple of months ago through a report. So thank you so much for that. I am conscious that the report is confidential, so I won't say any more apart from my sincere thanks to the staff involved for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And whoa, that's loud. The question I have doesn't go to the confidential nature of the report, more to the comments that Ben just made, Mr O'Brien just made. So essentially the CIS is being used as a bank with future LGIP funding to come back as a funding source. Is that something that, like, how would other councillors get that option considered? I know this one's been sitting on a plan for a long time and Councillor Bradley's been advocating for it, which is why it's obviously come up. But I think every councillor could find some land that's sitting in a future LGIP for a very good purpose that will only cost us more if we buy it later. So is there a mechanism for us to refer these either through Noelle or you or the director, or do we have to bring it to a GB to request, like, to get some sort of indicative support from councillors?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Raven, and through the chair. I think the typical process, if we would have had allowed this to take its course, this property has been identified these properties have identified in future priority infrastructure plans.
Yep.
However, due to revenue sufficiency, it got squeezed out. So it is on.
It's on a list.
On a list, and depending on the revenue available, it'll have its time. In this instance, if it had run its course and council wasn't approached, the land would have been acquired through the CIS, but probably in year 5 or year 6, most likely sometime thereout. So I think the mechanism, normally we would appreciate the approach to community service in regards to where does a potential future site and or development sit in the community infrastructure strategy. My understanding is the CIS will be reviewed annually from an action plan perspective, but we do have a 5-year program of strategically what are we looking at. I do acknowledge through development, though, the priorities will change and we need to be somewhat flexible and fluid with the development of the CIS. In this instance, the planets align a little bit because it is going to be on a future LGIP, and it is within the next sort of medium term of the CIS. We have a scenario where it can potentially be brought forwards without delaying too many projects. But if there's other properties or other opportunities for community facilities in other divisions, then we definitely appreciate the approach to see what we can do within the CIS. I'm also very cognisant of, within a capital program, for lack of a better term, some projects can accelerate, some projects will lag behind. So if we're looking at a budget perspective, not every project's going to be delivered in the right moment. So there may be opportunities within that recurrent budget to bring projects forward to utilise the funding that we have now if projects are going to be delayed by 6 or 12 months.
And just to be clear, I'm supportive of the sort of the shuffling of the decks that you're doing, because as Councillor Bannon likes to say, they're not making any more land and it doesn't get any cheaper. So buying it now instead of buying it in 5 years is more economical for the ratepayer and for that budget, so you get better value. So I'm supportive of it. I just think there's probably similar opportunities with stars aligning in other parts of the city that just haven't come up because it may not sit in a master plan that's got quite so much vision. But like, I can think of Melissa Street Ovals and that land there being, but it falls into sport, not community, so maybe it won't work anyway. But it'd just be good if other councillors, like when I saw this, this is a great idea, but it would be great if there was equal opportunity for all divisions to access it, that's all.
Through the chair, Councillor Raven, we also have what we presented at committee and at the workshop in August and at committee, the unfunded opportunities process, where there are items, and we realise that the CIS was developed at a point in time assessing the needs back in 2018-19. So communities grow and thrive, and there are different drivers and changes and opportunities. So we do have that process, which would basically take it through a truncated process to draw it into the CIS as well and be part of that annual action plan and budget development. So there are opportunities, and we're happy to work with any councillor who identifies that.
Thank you, that's great. Thanks for your indulgence, Madam Chair.
Do I have any other questions from any other councillors? Councillors, I have a motion on the board behind me at the moment. Can I have anyone to move that motion? Councillor Bradley, thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Murphy. By show of hands, all those who are in support. That has been unanimously supported. Thank you. Councillors, that marks the end of the Acting Community Service Manager's report. Do we have any general business for the manager? There being none, thank you very much, Ben. It's been a pleasure to have you here this morning, and we'll catch up with you soon. Okay, councillors, I now draw your attention to item 5.1. 5.1 is a report on the Jimboomba Park upgrades, and we're looking at the demolition of existing facilities. I'll invite the Sports, Leisure and Facilities Manager, Mr Nigel Brown, to enter discussions. But before we get underway, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they wish to declare? There being none, I'll now refer to Mr Brown to open the discussion. Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you, through the chair. So this report, as states, is to seek council's approval for the demolition of some existing facilities located within Jimboomba Park. The proposal is for 7 properties that have been identified that need to be removed to enable the progression of the Jimboomba Park master plan development, which was approved in the 2021 budget, which will facilitate the development of a new clubhouse for the rugby league, public toilets and the relocation of the RSL building. So the report details what those structures each are, where they're located, and I'm happy to take any other questions in relation to that matter.
Thank you, Nigel. And I have a question from Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr Brown, just a couple of quick questions. I'll just simple curiosity. In terms of the funding, or it says about the Jimboomba master plan delivered for 2.59 million. Is that sort of still on track, I guess, in terms of what's come through in terms of increased building costs? That was one question, and I'm just wondering, where are these community groups growing during this stage, and when are the facilities likely to be rebuilt, please?
Through the chair, so there's a couple of different components to that question. Firstly, we are still in the planning phases of the project, so the intent, so the large building blocks are identified in that plan, but in relation to timeframes, the purpose of this report is just to get that council approval to demolish those assets, which is a requirement under the policy. There will be a significant period of time before all of those components can work and be undertaken because of changes within that whole precinct, which Councillor Bannon's very familiar with. But once we've got this resolution, we can then work with those groups and ensure that that they're aware of all of those opportunities and the impacts on their services as well. The cost-wise, that is still our fixed budget. All of our projects are experiencing cost variations, particularly due to the COVID and cost of materials, but that is still our fixed budget for this project.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now defer to the area councillor, Councillor Bannon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I could probably answer Miriam's questions because it's not demolition of all of it. So we're going to demolition of one building. One sporting club can operate from that building to put this building in that building. And then we need to demolish another building to move this one over to that building. So it's not that we're going to demolition all of them. It's just moving one to start one and moving that one to move the next one. So it all fits into place. That way we don't have the sporting clubs with nowhere to go.
Sounds like a shell game. Do we have any other questions from any other councillors? There being no further questions, the motion is on the board behind me. Do I have someone to support the motion? Thank you, Councillor Bannon, and a seconder for the motion. Thank you, Councillor Bradley. By show of hands, can I see some support for the motion? And that has been unanimously supported. The motion's been carried. Thanks, everyone. Councillors, I now draw your attention to item 7.1, which is a confidential report. It's a late report and it's on the Logan Metro Sports Park activation. Before we open the discussion, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they wish to declare? There being none, I note it's considered necessary to take the discussion of this report into a closed session as the confidential report contains information pertaining to future budget considerations for council. Do any councillors wish to move into closed session for this item? Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Bannon. By a show of hands. Thank you, councillors. That's been supported with the exception of Councillor Halls. Councillor Hall, how do you vote?
Against.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillors, we'll now move into closed session. our tech crew a moment to get us back going again. Thank you, councillors. We're now back in open session. Councillors, you'll see that there is a motion on the board behind me at the moment. Could I have someone to please move the motion? Thank you, Councillor Heremiah. Oh, sorry, it's just popping up behind me now. Just give you a moment. Councillors will actually have the motion before them, though. Never mind, councillors, we're just experiencing minor technical difficulties, so please just bear with us for a tick. Fantastic, my apologies. You now have the motion on the board behind me. I have a mover of the motion and Councillor Heremiah. Seconder for the motion is Councillor Bannon. Can I please see support for the motion by a show of hands? Thank you, councillors. That's been unanimously supported. Councillors, that marks the end of our Sport, Leisure and Facility Managers' reports. Do we have any general business for the manager? Thank you. Councillor Bannon.
Just to go further on from that, mate, you're doing a top job on this one. There's not much that gets me super excited, but this one does. I know how much work you've done for the ridiculous time frame I gave you to do it in. So, mate, hats off to you and Francis. You killed it.
Thank you, Councillor Bannon. Do I have any other general business for the manager? Thank you, Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much. Mr Brown, given the wet weather that we've been experiencing recently, is there any update on facilities or anything that needs to be brought to our attention from a community sport perspective and community facilities perspective, i.e. damaged roofs, trees down, that sort of thing?
Through the chair, we always have leaking roofs across our network of infrastructure and respond to those. I'm not aware of any significant tree damage or storm damage across our network. Probably the biggest impact is on any of our construction projects and the wet weather delays and how that slows our progress. That's probably our biggest risk on some projects at the moment.
Excellent, thank you. Do any other councillors have any general business for the manager? Mr Brown, do you have any GB for us? No, thank you very much.
Wish you Merry
Nigel.
Christmas.
Thank you very much, Nigel. I note that due to social distancing restrictions, not all managers or staff could attend today. Do any councillors have any general business for the Director of Community Services? No. I'd just like to say, Katie, on my behalf, could you please pass on to all of your team a very big thank you for the incredible contribution they've made throughout the year. I think it's been a really good year for the community services area, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what next year has to offer. And I thank them also for their support of me and their role as chair. Ms Barton-Hovey, do you have any GB for us?
Thank you, through the chair. Just to echo that support back to you as our chair and to all the councillors. Thank you very much for all your support for the Community Services Directorate. There were so many highlights this year, things like the program-based budget, getting so many projects launched. So I commend all the councillors and the Mayor working with incredible Community Services Directorate staff to achieve some great outcomes for the community, and I wish you a happy Christmas.
And on that note, to everyone who might be listening at home, we'd just like to wish you a very happy and safe Christmas and a prosperous year ahead. Thank you, everyone. That completes our agenda for today. I declare the City Lifestyle Committee meeting of the 1st of December 2021 concluded at 9:41 a.m. and the meeting of the City Governments Committee will commence in 10 minutes. Thanks, everyone.